Oh, here.
We're gonna get going.
I think now we can probably, I have it right the top of the hour.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we can be told
Okay.
time and launch into it.
Okay. I'm about to mute myself and everything, and I'll let you guys take over from here. Just a note, just a word to everyone who's joined the session. Well, first of all, hello. You don't know me because I never show up in Plug and Pay. My name is Sam, and I'm the head of marketing at Payzar. And I just want to tell you a little bit about how this is going, because how this is going to work, because this is our first live episode. This is just going to be a friendly discussion. We're not doing this like a webinar. It's we're going to have kind of a debate about an interesting subject, and you are very welcome to plug questions into the chat. If you have comments or something like that, just go ahead, and we could kind of bring that in. This is being recorded. We are going to post it to our YouTube channel as we usually do with all our other episodes. And I think that's pretty much it. So take it away, guys.
Let's get into it. And Sam is being very modest when he says he hasn't been on the show in front of the camera, but he and the team are the brain behind Plug and Pay, and they make me and the guests look good in front of the camera. So
Okay.
Very important, and I'm glad Sam took the chance to introduce himself to everyone. So welcome everyone to Plug and Pay. As Sam already said, this is the start of an exciting new season for us. We launched this program not last year, actually beginning of this year, but we kind of took a break during the summer, and we are starting up the new episodes now. Everyone coming out of their summer vacation, so it feels like a great time to get back together. As Sam said, it's an informal gathering where we invite payroll professionals from all around the world to chat with us about topics that they believe are important for the payroll industry and are shaping the way we're thinking about our profession. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Mark Oliver Fiedler. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Payzar, and I'm the host of Plug and Pay. You can find episodes of Plug and Pay on our LinkedIn page, Payzar's LinkedIn page, that is on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search for Payzar, you can find Plug and Pay episodes there. And you can also find them on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. So now to launch into this season, as Sam said, we come up with something slightly different. In the past, we've done these kind of episodes as recorded sessions, not live sessions. So this is a new trial for us. Hopefully something that will go well and that we can continue to do in the future. And in today's session, we're going to be talking about a topic that I personally believe is very interesting and very important. And that is the big question: is payroll facing the big burnout? And to help us discuss this topic and answer this big question, we have a fantastic group of panelists that are joining me today. So to introduce them, we have Anne-Marie Verweyen. She's the Vice President of Global Payroll and Equity at Visa. Then we have Melanie Pizzi, or Mel. I think most people that know Mel call her Mel. And I think most people that work in the payroll space have gotten to know Mel in one way or another. So she's the CEO of the Global Payroll Association, the GPA. And then we have Colm Dudrenik. I hope I didn't butcher it too badly.
Yeah, you did that. Good.
You got it right. You got it right.
Perfect. See what a little 1 minute practice does. And Colm is a senior consultant specialized in payroll recruitment at a company called JGA Recruitment. So first of all, fantastic to have all of you here. Anne-Marie, Mel, Colm, thank you so much for taking the time. We'll dive into some questions now that we've kind of thought of, but if there are questions that you have, the audience has along the way, please plug them into the chat. I see some people have already discovered the chat and introduced themselves, which is fantastic. And as we discuss this topic, feel free to ask your questions in the chat function, and we'll try to pick up on those questions as we go along. Okay. So now to get us into the topic, I think it's fair to say that we probably all have been hearing a lot about the Great Resignation. It's been in the news, and it's been talked about in a lot of different forums. And what I think hasn't been discussed as much is more specifically, how does this sort of meta trend of the Great Resignation that we've all been hearing about and watching over the last months and last year maybe, how is this specifically impacting payroll? And I will say, judging by sort of anecdotally by what I'm hearing, the noise I'm picking up in conversations with clients and people that we're in discussions with, it does feel that there are a lot of people that are leaving their jobs, their payroll jobs, and for a variety of different reasons. And it does feel that there's more employee turnover, more changes happening than kind of in previous times. So I think the first interesting question is this something that's really, is this a trend that we're seeing? Is there something that's going on? Is there a Great Resignation happening in the payroll space? And I'm curious to get the perspective from our panelists here. So maybe I'll start with Colin. You're working in payroll recruitment, and hence you're sitting quite close to people looking for new jobs and changing jobs. So what's your assessment? Has the situation changed over the last year or so? What are you seeing?
Without a doubt, I think that at the moment, so you can't talk about the past few years without talking about the pandemic and everything else. And off the back of that, you say about the Great Resignation is absolutely right. You can almost look at it as almost like a great awakening as well, right? So people have come out the back of that. There's new ways of working, and you're kind of seeing that people are voting with their feet. If they're not happy where they are, they're looking to move on. I mean, at the moment, it's very much a candidate-driven market. You look at people that are looking for new jobs, they've got options out there, whether that's because businesses where they currently aren't offering what they want and they've got better options elsewhere. But yeah, in answer to your question, without a doubt, the last few years has certainly changed, and we're seeing it's a lot busier. And like I said, candidates have multiple in order to move on. So in answer to your question, yeah, that has changed.
And are you, so in your role then of trying to help both employees, but also probably primarily employers to find new candidates to fill roles, are you also finding that it's getting harder to find candidates that are, that are able to take on those roles that have been vacated?
I think so. I think the difficult thing is almost two sides to it. So if you've got a business which is offering candidates what they want in regards to flexible working, the benefits that people want now, and I think at the moment you've got candidates have got a choice, right? And people have a choice as to where they work, how they work, when they work. And if they are, if for example, we're working with a company that is offering what candidates want, naturally makes the search easier. On the flip side of that, if there's a business that is maybe looking at working in ways before the pandemic or throughout that, and they're still looking to work in that manner, naturally makes the search harder. And like I said earlier, people have a lot of option now. There's more choice out there, and if people can, or companies can offer candidates what they want, for us it makes it easy to find people. At the same time, if they're stuck in ways of working pre-pandemic and pre the last 3 years or so, naturally makes it harder.
And just to get a clarification on the point, pre-pandemic would mean you have to be in the office.
Yeah, being in the office. Yeah, being in the office. I think that the benefit side of things as well, companies now offering wellness benefits. There's also an increase in salary. I mean, over the past couple of years, at the back of the pandemic and in the last year or so, salaries have risen, not just in payroll, but across a lot of industries, and actually payroll falls into that. It's not uncommon that we're seeing 20% increases in salaries, people looking to move jobs. So, if companies aren't moving with the times and looking to offer that, people are kind of voting with their feet and they're looking to move on.
Got it. Mel or Henry, what's your experience or your perception? Are you seeing similar things happening in kind of the conversations and the things that you're watching in your parts of the world?
Do you want to go first, Mel?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, we're seeing a big change, really. We've got a lot of members reaching out, asking us if we know anyone, but they're looking for people to join their team, and they're really struggling to find people. And I think also they're having to reassess the type of people that they're getting. You're not necessarily going to find the perfect candidate now. And it's really looking at the essential skills that you may need, or is it actually the personality or the person that you want. And when Callum mentioned about the salary increases as well, I met with some payroll directors just recently, and one of their team left, a junior member, and she got a £15,000 pay rise. The rest of the team found out, and then obviously to keep that team, they then had to increase their salaries. So the whole market is changing, but I'm wondering if that will slow down. I wonder if that may slow down slightly with, an impending, oh my God, I've forgotten the word.
The inflation.
Yeah,
the
and
recession.
Global recession, will that start slowing down and people actually thinking, okay, I've got a job, shall I stay here? So who knows? But at the moment, I think it's the craziest time I've experienced in the last 20 odd years, and it's definitely a candidate driven market.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, and I think you're right. It will be interesting to watch how what's sort of happening on a macroeconomic level in terms of the overall economy, how that's going to play out and impact what we're experiencing right now. Anne-Marie, you're based in the US.
Yeah, I'm in the middle between Colin and Mel. Like, maybe I'm fortunate, and let's knock on wood, but like my team has been very stable. I do see that at the beginning of the pandemic, or when we just came out of the pandemic, people are like going crazy, and salary is definitely a driver if people are moving. But what I see now as well, if I talk to people in my network, the upcoming recession is making people pause and realize, like, I have something, like, and the big companies that you don't expect are laying people off. So right. I see this, we go crazy, we can do everything we want, and let's see. And now I'm like seeing that people just stay put. And I have to say, like, payroll people are one of the most loyal people to their job. So I think if it slows down, those people will stay put and defend the fort.
That's interesting. So it sounds like you're already seeing sort of we're already in your part of the world. It sounds like you might have already been past the crest, and it's already kind of, people are retrenching a bit more into, let's not make any rash moves, and they're more looking for stability now.
Right.
In general, in terms of the resignations that have happened, do you think there's been kind of a specific trends by either industry or certain geographies that have been impacted more by this, or types of organizations, or maybe even the roles, right? Is it something that happens across all levels within the payroll organization, or is it more junior roles or maybe more senior roles? I'm curious if there's any differences that you would have seen or detected.
We're seeing movement at all levels, right? And I think that it depends, like I said earlier, on what's on offer. And like Mel said, salaries are driver. There's other things that come with it. If you've got a business that is wanting someone 5 days a week in the office and haven't offered an increase in salary or anything else from the past 3 years, people are looking to move. And I think that the businesses that are looking to invest in their team, Amber, if you've got a team that is loyal and stable, they're going to be happy, right? So people that aren't, if they've got investment in the team, and that's not just financial, whether it's, you know, courses or support networks, or the option to take time out and I suppose step away from potentially getting burnt out, they're going to stay where they are. If they're not happy, they're looking to move on. And I think that it's not just at one particular level. We're seeing that across, you know, whether that's coming in as a, you know, a payroll administrator or a senior payroll manager, or higher than that.
Yeah. Victor here is making an interesting point on the chat. He's saying, you know, the other side of all of this is to allow roles, payroll roles to work from home, and hence not be so tied down to hiring someone local, but, you know, expand your kind of talent pool to a more global pool of, you know, people that you would bring into these roles.
And it's tough. Yeah. So we have a hybrid at Visa, and I love working from home. I love being in the office as well. It's a tough one, because if I'm in the office, there's so much energy. There's so much passion. We get in a room, we do whiteboarding, and there's this energy flow. Yes, I may be more like productive at home, but I'm not getting the same drive or motivation from being in the office. Plus, you know, the company may set a direction and you don't want to make exceptions. Like, we've all proven that we can work from home for 2 years, but different companies, different policies, different direction. And it's an interesting one that Victor brings up, because I think that is going to be a deciding factor, is how flexible is a company for you to work with. Like, come in the office once a while, or, you know, can you flex it based on your family needs? We'll see. That is interesting how it plays out. Yeah,
for sure. And in terms of the are there geographic hotspots where, you know, we see more, you know, resignations happening, more employee turnover? Susanna here from Norway is commenting that it sounds like they've had some turnover, some employees left in their Dubai team, which would be, you know, I suppose Middle East. From your perspective, can you Mel is on mute and cannot unmute herself. Let's see if we can help you. Maybe Sam has to step in there. I think it's Sam's.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just trying to. I'm just trying to go on mute because of the dog. Sorry, everyone. So he's normally getting my attention now, so that's why.
That's all right. Yeah. So curious if anyone else has seen any sort of more regional geographic hotspots in terms of, you know, specifically, you know, high turnover rates or resignation rates in their organizations.
I feel like from our perspective, it is a global situation. You know, there's always been a problem with talent in payroll globally. You know, no matter where you go in the world, everyone is worried about where we're going to get the next generation of payroll in, and also, you know, where they're looking for talented payroll specialists. So it would be interesting to see if there is a certain location, but I do feel like it is potentially a global issue at the moment. And as you say, because of globalization, you can recruit people from anywhere in the world now, can't you? Really, if you are, you know, fully remote. So I think that increases that situation as well. Yeah,
you're right. I'd agree. I mean, you know, like you say, I think it's a global scale. I mean, we obviously do a lot of work in the UK, but across Europe and further afield as well. And it's not, I don't think it's an isolated thing just to the UK. I think you're absolutely right. It goes worldwide. And like you say, to try and find talent and good talent at that in other countries is where companies are probably struggling. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not just an isolated thing. I don't think there's one location that has a higher turnover or less retention than other. I think it's a worldwide issue.
Yeah, interesting. Susanna is saying that they had actually quite easier time finding consultants in Brazil and Mexico, which is interesting. That LATAM is like, at least in their case, I guess it also depends always on, you know, your organization, how attractive you are as an employer in that specific geography. People know your brand, and timing, right? you might just be going to market for finding talent at the right point in time where there's people out there looking for new roles.
You made a good point there, though, as well, that people do need to promote their organization. You got to look attractive. And that's the other thing. I spoke to somebody who was looking for 40 employees, and apparently they were like one of the best companies to work for in the UK. They don't promote that. Like, why are you promoting that? That helps you become attractive. So I think there's two sides to looking for candidates now. It's flexibility, but also you've got to really start promoting your department or your company to really make it attractive.
And just on that point, I think it's a very interesting point, promoting your department, because it's one thing to, be whatever, Google or, LinkedIn, and everyone says, oh, what a great company you want to work for, or Visa for that matter, right? But it's another thing to be attractive as the payroll department of that company. So I wonder if you guys have any thoughts on what can the payroll leadership team or the payroll department do to be particularly appealing to employees that they're trying to recruit into their organization.
Anne-Marie is the star of that.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking
get the
like,
secret sauce out.
It was kind of at the end of the presentation that I made some notes. So for me, it means like you have to change how people see payroll. So first of all, you need to build your reputation with the other departments. Like, payroll is, I call it always the dustbin of everything else. Like, and what everybody drops will clean it up. So you need to be transparent. But also, if I look at my teams, like in the past, somebody came in as the payroll analyst and like a data cruncher, and then if they wanted something else, the only option they had was to leave and find something else. We built a whole organization around supporting the payroll analyst, like project management, compliance, governance, automation. We have bots in payroll. We have integration. Like, if you want something else, it doesn't mean you have to leave the payroll department or you have to leave Visa. There's an opportunity for you within. Now, if 50 people come at the same time, I want something else, it's all within reason. But it's interesting because while you were talking, I wrote down, when I started at Visa, like nobody wanted payroll. Like, payroll was mine. Now payroll is like, it's a well-oiled machine, and we have our ups and downs, don't get me wrong. And that's not just me. I have a fantastic team who joins me every day, and it just makes my day so happy and make sure that I can take my wellness hours without worrying. But now we're in a good shape. You can see that people start to chip in and they want a piece of that pie. And like, well, I think, there should be a dotted line to me, or, I think I should be involved in that. So it's interesting that when you polish up your reputation and you make payroll interesting and visible, suddenly it becomes attractive for way more people than just payroll people.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's an important aspect to work on, right, for all of us. And we jumped ahead a little bit, talking about what can we do in order to address some of the challenges that, the burnout and the resignation. But going back to talking a bit about, burnout, that's where we started, right? And burnout can be one of the drivers, one of the factors for people leaving their jobs. Other factors, as both Callum and Mel mentioned, are opportunity driven. Hey, I'm getting paid more, so I'm going to jump on that opportunity to get a better salary. But if we stick with that factor of the big burnout for a moment, we all know that payroll is a stressful role, right? You're constantly under the gun. You have to make sure that employees get paid 100% correctly, 100% of the time, as we always like to say in payroll. You're working against very tight timelines, and it tends to be a bit of a thankless role, right? Because you do your job and you put in the long hours. But in a lot of cases, I think it sort of goes, it's been taken for granted, right? No one at the end of the month jumps up and applauds the payroll team and says, fantastic, we got another payroll out the door, even though, the payroll team might have done some heroic saves and, loops in order to get it done. But given all that, I wonder, Anne-Marie, you've been working in payroll now for a good amount of time. Has the stress, have the responsibilities increased? Is this all coming to a head now, or and if so, what has made it more stressful, more of a pressure cooker than it has been maybe in the past?
And I want to piggyback a little bit just for 1 second on what you said, like nobody thanks payroll. I was on a training yesterday and we had to introduce ourselves. And I said, I'm Anne-Marie, Global Payroll and Equity. Like, oh, I had a situation, somebody got a paycheck, a weekly paycheck, 38,000. I don't even know the currency. And then somebody else did. And within no time, I had 3 examples of where payroll went horribly wrong in the past. Like nobody said, you know what? Thank you for paying. And I said, I appreciate the feedback. It's a long time ago. The fact that you need to raise these from so long ago means we are actually doing really well. And I will thank my team tomorrow that we get paid. But it was interesting that immediately the horror stories came up. I'm like, thank you. Thank you, team, for getting us paid. But that on a side note. So
no, it's classic. I love that little anecdote. That's great. Yeah. It exactly makes the point, right? That's how people think about it. The negative sticks with them, the positive.
Yeah, I agree. But to come back to your question, I do think the stress changed. Like in the past, it was the stress of keying 3,000 variables in a spreadsheet or a system, send it off, you get it back, you print the pay slips and you check it. I think the stress has changed, that it's now more becoming automation, controls, smaller time frames to get things done. And, businesses are growing, expanding, and everything in the end, payroll is involved because we need to pay people. So I think it has changed. I think we're still faced with the same deadlines. Everybody we need to get people paid on time. We need to make sure we're compliant, but it's a different stress. It requires different skills, different levels, like automation, controls. Like Visa is highly regulated. The amount of audits that we get, and it's part of the job, but it's very stressful. If you have to run payroll, you have your projects, then you get your audits. So I think people need to be more like a spider in the web. So they are the SME, but they have a lot of feet or hands in many different work streams.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it puts more responsibility and burden on the individual, which used to be more just but more transactional crunching.
Yeah.
Things need to be just a lot more clued in and versatile on a multifaceted, multidimensional spectrum of different things.
Yeah.
And I could see how that becomes very, very stressful as a role. Mel or Colm, any perspective on the sort of stressfulness, or maybe also going back to the point about, I think when Colm talked about the trend we're seeing, the pandemic certainly has changed things a lot in everything in our daily lives, but also in our professional lives, right? Has the pandemic added a layer of stress or burden, or just changed the way payroll professionals need to work, that drives more people to get burned out or get frustrated and get to the point where they say, I'm looking for something else?
I've really noticed it recently. I was actually interviewing somebody last week, and she said that her cortisol levels, I think it's cortisol levels, were so high even after she stopped processing payrolls, because she was so stressed. And for about 4 or 5 months, she was still stressed. It was like a version of PTSD, because stress levels were so high. And I think the problem is what's happened. is that you've gone through 2 years of a pandemic, really, and then you have other political situations which have caused, further stress for some global payroll directors. And then you have, like for the UK, we've got a new MP, so that's going to bring more legislation in. I think one of the situations is it just hasn't stopped. There's not been a quiet period. So what we found what I found is that people that I've known for years have just said, I don't need to work. I've had enough and I'm leaving. And they've only got 3 months notice to give and they're leaving the profession. So there's an element where people are burnt out and they've definitely reassessed their situation, their life, their lifestyle, looked for other roles. But there's also a situation where people have just said, I've had enough, I'm leaving. And that's such a sad situation. It's almost like, they've been turned off payroll over the last few years and you've lost that history. And one of the people that I know, they've been in the company for over 20 odd years and they only had 3 months notice to give, all that knowledge and just gone. So I think it's definitely burnt people out and it hasn't stopped. It's not, that situation hasn't stopped. And I think employers have to be aware of that, and not just payroll departments, other departments. There needs to be some additional support, I think.
Yeah. And I think the point you made about someone working in that role for 20 years and then saying, I just can't do it anymore, I had enough. It's particularly a telltale sign of just how much burden and pressure people must be feeling, given the fact that payroll professionals, as I think one of you guys mentioned before, tend to be extremely loyal, right? Loyal to the company, but even more loyal or passionate, really is probably the better word, about what they're doing, right? They take great pride in what they're doing. So for someone then to come to a point where they say, all the pride that maybe I've had in the past years just doesn't weigh off against what I'm feeling is tearing me apart here is kind of it's kind of a dangerous sign, I suppose, in terms of what we're seeing.
Yeah.
There's 2 points there I just want to jump on. Just one from Anne-Marie. One, it's non-stop, right? It is non-stop, and you've got the changes in legislation. Look at the pandemic. You've got just the furlough thing alone in the UK. It's non-stop. And then, like Anne-Marie said, I think the complexity of the payroll or payroll in general, it has progressed so much compared to what it might have been years gone by, that the stresses that come with that are massive. And I think Alan just put a note in the chat on the side, just about the recognition and how that it's critical for anyone, but payroll in particular. I mean, the pressure that they're under to make sure people get paid on time accurately, and the impact it can have if it's not the case, it is massive. And naturally, I think that it leads to burnout. And like you said, if the mental health has been affected as a result of it. I mean, I spoke to someone last week that in 4 years hadn't taken more than 4 days off at any one time, just due to the pressure of the job, and because they can't step away from it. They've either got no one to take their place, to support, the resources aren't there for someone to ensure that the payroll can be processed in their absence, and that comes from the business on a wider scale. But they almost feel guilty taking time away from work, and naturally over time it leads to burnout, leads to stress, and mental health can be affected by it. So it's a big issue.
There's an interesting question from Miriam that says, who does the payroll manager go to when?
I'm going to pick up on that as well. I think it's a good question. Yes. But what are your thoughts being a payroll manager, payroll leader?
So years ago, I would have gone to nobody and I would have tried to sort it out myself and work more hours, longer hours. Now I go to my boss and he needs to help me prioritize. Now, sometimes he can, sometimes I just need to get it done. But, the fact that I'm part of a team and I'm never alone, like I have people who can help me, but my go-to person is my boss. And if my boss, and this hasn't happened, if my boss would not be responsive, I would look to see if there is like a trusted person, an employee relations person, and I would bring it to their attention. Like I have learned over time that staying quiet helps nobody and it hurts me even more. But that I had to learn. But now I would go to my boss, and if my boss would not help, I would find a trusted person to help me out.
I think the issue, in my recruitment days, I used to have a lot of senior people get to the point where they just needed to have a chat and to de-stress, and sometimes that would end in tears because they're just not getting the support from their managers. And I think there's been enough situations that are in the press where payroll managers haven't had the support. There was a situation in Australia where somebody went into a new role, people left, they didn't re-recruit for that department, that person felt responsible like payroll people do and ended up becoming quite ill, and they've managed to sue the department, the government. And I think that's not uncommon. That situation isn't uncommon because people don't, or managers or directors or the C-suite don't necessarily understand the pressures that payroll are under, and they think it's just a press of a button. I still think that there is that situation, and if you do have a supportive manager, then well done, and you're lucky that you do, because I don't think that happens with everyone.
The famous
That's my
button,
dog.
which is a great transition to a question that my friend Pete Tiliakos is asking here in the chat about technology. And Pete knows I'm a techie, so I appreciate the question. How much do you see modern tech easing some of the pain associated with payroll that can lead to, but also enabling professionals to grow or pivot their skills in new directions to ease the burnout, to retain skilled talent? I think it's a very interesting question.
So Mark, I think we should have a separate live session on this topic alone. Like you can fill an hour on this topic.
Yes, you're right. It's a very deep and thought-provoking question that Pete is asking. And
I can give a little bit of an insight, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking first, but everybody talks about automation and everybody talks about robots and all kind of stuff. You need budget, you need people, you can't do this on your own. And yes, we have some bots in payroll now at Visa, but it took 2 years to actually get prioritized. And you only can spend the money once as a company, and there are so many initiatives that all fight for the same bucket of money and HRIT resources. But with that said, the reason that we have grown is like we have talent within payroll who can do a lot of this stuff. Who are very creative, who can do a lot of the groundwork, which makes it easier. But I always get goosebumps when they say like we need automation. I agree, but as a payroll team, you cannot just get automation. You need to fight for your budget and your resources, and you don't always win that battle. It doesn't mean you lose. You may be on the back burner for next year or the year after that, but it's not as easy as just automating. There's a whole process, and that's why I think we can do a session on this alone, and you easily fill an hour.
I think we'll already subscribe to that session. Sam has already signed up to get us organized around that. So great question, Pete. And I think you got a very good beginning of an answer from Anne-Marie, and we'll examine that and dig into that deeper. Very, very nice. I want to go back to the point about, so people resign, they leave their jobs. To me, sometimes the question then is also, so where do they end up? Colm, you mentioned early, there's a salary aspect, there's the flexibility of where I work from aspect, which would all suggest that people are moving from one payroll job maybe to another payroll job, which that's just sort of moving the chairs around. But it feels like there's more going on. It feels like, Mel, you mentioned one example of, one of your acquaintances or friends who, after 20 years, just decided enough's enough. I can't do it anymore. I'm leaving the industry altogether. So I'm curious, what your observations are. Is there more people are just moving from one payroll role to another payroll role, and maybe just finding employers that are more supportive, or give them more flexibility, give them more money? Or is there a bigger thing going on where people are overall sort of getting tired of the role that comes with this profession, or the burden that comes with this profession, and are just leaving the industry space altogether?
Mel touched on it about how she knew someone after 20 years that had kind of just had enough and decided to leave the profession. We're on the flip side of that, kind of seeing Payroll naturally getting a bigger profile at the back of the pandemic. There's more recognition for it, I think, and it's nowhere near where it needs to be, but it's going in the right direction slowly. And as a result, I suppose potentially moving into that trend of where HR may have been, where people are looking to join the profession from at the beginning of their career and get into it. I think you see yesterday, Payroll is a career on the side of the Tax of the Year event, right? And people are looking to take up apprenticeships, and apprenticeships are out there to get into it from an early age. I don't know if it's so much people just kind of moving chairs. I think that there's a lot more, I suppose, variation in role in Payroll compared to where it may have been years ago. And Anne-Marie touched on it earlier, where the complexity has moved on, and there's different positions people can move to within a Payroll team. So it's not that they're moving like for like just another company. There's other positions they might be moving into, still within Payroll as an umbrella, but just a slightly different role, whether that's within a technology side, whether it's in the reporting side or automation or implementation, anything within that. They might be choosing to stay within the profession, but just into another sort of position. Of course, there are people that, like Mel said, that are looking to leave it altogether, which is a shame and something that we don't want to happen. But ideally, I mean, Mel, you mentioned earlier that it's hard to see where the next generation talent is going to come from, which is a massive, I suppose, talking point and something that needs to happen. But yeah, it's not like a definitive answer on yes, people leaving or no, they're not. I think there's a lot of movement going on, not necessarily just from one role to another, but there's different roles out there now.
Mel or Marie?
I just want to say that the people that are leaving, it's because they're lucky enough to have enough money to retire. So it's not that they're going to another industry or anything else. They just put their boots up and just gone, right, but we I think Payroll people love Payroll. I think generally people love Payroll and they want to stay in the Payroll industry. I don't actually come across a lot of people that want to leave the actual Payroll industry. On the odd occasion, you might have somebody go into a HR role, but in a few years later, they generally come back. People always end up, if they do leave the industry, I think they always end up coming back to Payroll. So for whatever the draw is, you can't get away from it.
Yeah, I have to.
Sorry, go ahead, Emery.
So I see Domi is on here, and Domi is a great example of somebody who was super talented in Payroll and turns out now to be super talented at Stella McCartney and took on a much bigger role. I think people start to realize that Payroll people are good, they're talented, and they have much more skills than just Payroll. With that said, Mel, when I worked at Amazon, I moved into global mobility for 2 years, and yeah, that was not my thing. I liked it, and I really had a good time those 2 years, but I'm a Payroll person. I call myself a Payroll nerd. Payroll is my thing, and I love expanding. Like I have equity now, which I think is super interesting, but it's also super transactional at some point, which makes it a very, very good match for Payroll. But I'm Payroll, like my bones are Payroll bones.
And just on that point, I think both Mel and Anne-Marie made the point about, it's not very common for someone from Payroll to suddenly say, I'm going to become a whatever, salesperson or something like that. My observation is, Mel, you said, you see people that just say, okay, I've enough to retire, so I'm going to, just get out of the job market entirely. I've also seen quite a few examples where people have said, corporate payroll job, too stressful. I'm going to become an independent payroll consultant, right?
Yeah.
Which gives you flexibility in terms of where you work, when you work, for whom you work. Do you see that? Is that sort of a coming trend, that there's more people that just say, and it maybe also plays sort of into potentially a generational thing, right? Where people say, hey, I'm going to work in a payroll position for 6 months or 12 months, and then I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to travel the world. Is that something that all of you are picking up on as well?
I think that's always been there. Becoming a consultant has always been a dream for a lot of people, even the last 10, 15 years. Callum will know if it's increased just recently. I think if you're in a financial situation where you don't have to work for 3 months or 6 months, that's the reality of it. It's not saying that would happen, but you've got the buffer of the money behind, then people have gone, okay, I'm going to try a bit of consultancy to have that flexibility. Have you seen an increase in that, Callum?
I don't think there's been an increase in the trend of people necessarily wanting to move into being consultants. Like you say, it's kind of always been there. And if people have got the option to do it, they might explore it a little bit further. But yeah, I wouldn't say that there's been a massive surge of people moving into it for any particular reason recently, at least.
Okay, perfect. So looking at the time here, we should probably get into the part of the discussion where we talk a bit about what can we do in order to address the situation, and we already started talking about that earlier a little bit when I asked Anne-Marie about how do we make the payroll function more attractive. So I want to get back into that part of the discussion, broadly asking what can be done to reduce the stress or improve the perception of the payroll profession. And I'm not necessarily saying keep people in their roles, because maybe that's not the right answer, right? But at least not lose people due to burnout, where they just say, I got to step out of this role entirely because I'm not feeling well anymore to do my job.
I was on a roundtable at the beginning of the week, and this sort of came up about helping employees or reducing stress. And I think the thing is, we've worked from home for 2 years, haven't we? And now we've got a hybrid solution, and I think we're all working out how that's still going to work. Or if you're all working from home, how are you supporting your employees? And I think we've got to figure that out quite soon. Like, how do you support them if they are totally remote or hybrid? And it's implementing new things of keeping in touch, or making sure that you do all meet at some point to have that physical contact. But Anne-Marie, I don't know what your
let me start with, I think it's a two-way street. Like, I'm the VP of Global Payroll. It's my job to help my team to remove roadblocks, to make sure they have a good work-life balance. And payroll, you always have your peak moment. So it's not a cushy 9-to-5 job. Everybody knows that. But what you have to create a safe environment where people feel okay coming to you, telling you that they have too much on their plate. And I still discover that people are not willing to open up on how much they're really doing. They suffer in silence because they see it as a form of weakness. For me, it's the complete opposite. Like, if you come to me, you allow me to help you, and I can help you. I can help you prioritize. I can help push back to others who put pressure on it. But I think there's education needed that it's okay to ask for help. And I see too many times people just are afraid and do not ask for help. And I tell my team all the time, like, I hear you're frustrated. You keep telling you have so much work. Come to me and I can help you. And I've built that trust. I still need to poke a little bit sometimes. We're not perfect, but that is, I think, my biggest aha is create a safe environment for your people so that they don't feel that it's a weakness and then you know, at the end of the year, they get the bill for it, because that should never, ever, ever be the case.
Yeah. I love that term, suffer in silence. I totally resonate with that. I think as we discussed, payroll professionals are extremely loyal and dedicated to the work that they're doing, but almost to a fault, right? Where they're so dedicated to it that they swallow just a lot. You know, they just absorb all the stress and the pain that comes with that role, and it almost is like sometimes when I talk to payroll managers, it feels like it's almost like a badge of honor that, you know, I had to work all night against payroll done this month. And if you don't work all night, it almost feels like, what's wrong with me, right? I didn't step up enough to, so it almost has like a little bit of a, dare I say, masochistic, taint to it sometimes. And I think, to your point, making people understand that that's not what, you know, makes you a great payroll professional. Suffering through, you know, hard times, you got to be able to open up about the challenges that you have, seek help, seek relief, find the relief valve, whatever that looks like.
And I'll give one more, like, and I told that example many times before, so a lot of people will go like, oh, there she is again. But I worked at Amazon, and one of my best leaders I've ever worked for, you know, I trust him blindly. I was in Europe. So I started my day early in the morning, 5 o'clock. It's normally go home time. The US wakes up and my day expanded. So I complained, and he told me, he said, you know, you should look at yourself. You are not setting the boundaries. And that was not what I want to hear. So I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you keep accepting all these invites. People forget that you're in a different time zone. And I started to decline meetings, and people were like, but you need to be there. And I thought, you realize it's 11 p.m. for me, right? They're like, I didn't realize that. Now, doesn't mean I never had a late meeting or a very early meeting, but I do think, like, I control part of the boundaries, but I had to be told that. And I knew he had my back, and I felt confident and safe doing that. But I was partly to blame for the problem because I didn't say no.
That's a great point. I think, as you said, it's a two-way street, right? It's got to come from you, but it also requires the support of the management and of the company in order to make someone feel like they can do that, what, you know, your manager encouraged you to do. So I like that. Great story.
I think it's such an important topic. I mean, just quickly, sorry, Mark, just on,
no, I was gonna ask you about this anyway. So
just on what Mel and Anne-Marie said. I mean, like Mel said, with working from home and people almost being a bit more isolated, having those support networks in place is so important. And I think that, you know, you mentioned that people within payroll, they want to help, they want to do as much as they can, and often to their detriment. I think that I see it as just a very resilient profession, and people want to do as much as they possibly can. But, you know, if, as Anne-Marie said, it's not a weakness to speak about it. And if you've got a support network in place, then amazing. And if you haven't, then, you know, that needs to be there from an employer, or have someone to go to if you are feeling like, you know, work's getting too much, or you're facing burnout, or you're stressed out of what's going on. So, you know, if people can step forward and, you know, speak about their mental health or potential burnout as a result of this conversation, then amazing. But I think employers need to do more. Or, Anne-Marie, it's amazing that people can come to you and talk about how they're feeling, or if work's getting too much, but not everyone has that yet. So it's really important that is put in place, especially people working at home. And I think that it's just a really important aspect of what people are doing.
Great point.
And I just want to say, like, I have a coach, because I think sometimes there are situations where I go like, I don't know how to deal with this. Like, what you see is what you get. And I like climb in my keyboard and I need to, like, my whole career has been focused on that. And if I tell people I have a coach, you're like, why do you have a coach? Well, because I need somebody I can talk to who is not emotionally involved in what I do on a day-to-day basis, that is a safe environment, has no relationship with my work whatsoever. It's not really accepted yet in the payroll world or in the world that I like. People think like, well, you're strong, you don't need a coach. I do, because I need somebody who also tells me no, or who helps me define a strategy on how I act better, react better, like work better. And it took me a while to find a good fit. But I now have a lady who I love, and we meet every couple of weeks, and we talk from like simply like managing emails, standard responses, to how do I take a minute for myself to calm down, and how do I close the day. And it sounds very fluffy, but I benefit from that.
Mm.
No, I think I love that. It's a great point. Obviously applies to any role in any profession at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But given the environment that we discussed in payroll, where it can be a pressure cooker, I think having that kind of trusted person that can guide you and recalibrate you kind of where you are in your headspace, I think is very good advice, right? And not to see that as a sign of weakness or inferiority is, I think, very, 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 great way to think about it, great way to take up that opportunity. Well, listen, I know there's been a lot of chat here in the chat as well. I think that brings us kind of to the end of the points that we had thought about prior to setting up this session. If there are other questions that people have that have been listening, feel free to pop them in the chat now, and we can try to get to them. I don't know if I missed anything.
Well, I see the word recognition come up a lot, so maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. You want to go first?
Sure. So I do think, like, what I do with I celebrate every success, and I when my team does, I go to like the GPA, the session that Mel hosted. Like, I go to my boss and I'm like, I make him part of the celebration. I think every time you complete a project, or somebody does something amazing, or your team has done something that creates visibility, share it with the world. People who don't want to read it, they can delete the email and move on. But a lot of people actually find it very interesting to know what you're doing. So I celebrate every success.
Mm.
And you celebrate by letting people know about the success. You guys also have sort of celebration rituals, I don't know, team gatherings.
Yeah, so back in the office, we do like we go out for lunch, not every time, because otherwise my budget will go to pieces where we currently are. But we have go beyonds where you can give somebody a recognition, and that just really works. But sometimes giving somebody just the tap on the shoulder and saying, well done, and share that with others,
right?
That's so powerful.
Words go a long way, right? It doesn't have to be monetary or other fancy things. Sometimes just big thank you is all that's needed. Yeah.
What I think is important as well is that obviously the recognition there comes from within yourself, Amory, and your team. I think it's also important if the recognition comes from outside of that payroll team as well, so the wider business. Like you said earlier, almost silence is golden within payroll. You hear when there's something that goes wrong, and I know you don't expect a pat on the back every time someone's paid accurately and on time, but I think that the recognition from a wider business is really, really important as well, not just within that particular team.
I agree.
And I think payroll leaders, not everyone shouts out, but I think all payroll leaders, or you don't have to be a leader in payroll, do you? Everyone needs to learn to shout out all the positive stuff. It might be you might feel uncomfortable, but I think you get used to it after a while. So I do think we all need to celebrate the successes more than talk about the negative, stuff.
And I think I want to close recognition. I think, Mark, we talked about that when we did the podcast, is transparency in what payroll's performance is, because sometimes you have one mistake and they're blowing it up like the world is on fire and suddenly everything becomes an emergency. When you look at your data and you can show that you're actually doing a really good job and this is an exception, you educate others as well to take a step back and take a normal approach to an error. Because as long as people work and there's still manual processes and we're receiving data from others, mistakes will be made. It's how we deal with this mistake have a lot of impact in the stress level from our payroll teams.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I agree. I think how you deal with that, and pointing out the positives, all the positives that happen, and celebrating those, I think is a crucial part of creating more balanced situation, more balanced mindset for payroll professionals. And we will be celebrating. That gives me a chance to do a little plug for the GPA. We will be celebrating the payroll profession in it's a couple of weeks, right, Mel?
Weeks, yeah. It's been a busy month. We've got a lot going on, but yeah, we're in Dublin in, I think it's 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So
anyone who's not signed up yet, I don't know if there's any seats actually left, but
we've literally sold out. Yeah, this is the largest event this year. So we've got a lot of people from all around the world coming, so hopefully it'll be a good one. But I think you're coming, aren't you, Mark? So
we are. Yes, we'll be there. We'll look forward to celebrate each other a little bit.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, listen. With that, I think let's wrap it up here. And I think this was a fantastic discussion. I took away a lot of interesting ideas, thoughts, people's comments in the chat, fantastic. And this was obviously our first live event as a trial. I don't know how the rest of the people here. I felt it went very well, and it is something we'll discuss in our team to hopefully and probably do again. Thanks to Pete, we already have a topic. Not that we're lacking topics, but I think it's a great topic. The point that he brought up about technology and how that's sort of helping or maybe not helping, the role of technology in all of this. So we'll pick that topic up, and leads me to first of all thank the panelists, Anne-Marie, Mel, Colin. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for your insights and perspective on this very important topic. And also, of course, to thank everyone who joined us today for your participation, for your questions, and hopefully, if you like this kind of session, join us again. We release episodes, not necessarily live episodes, but episodes that talk about these kind of topics every couple of weeks. And stay tuned for more to come very soon. All right. Thank you so much.
Super.
Thank you.
You all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Cheers, Mark. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.